Once your rookie draft is finished, there are still plenty of opportunities to improve your dynasty team. We're talking about over 20 rookies that you can add to your dynasty taxi squad post your rookie draft. We want to find the next Brock Purdy, Isaiah Pacheco, the next Puka Nakua, if you will. All right, I'm going to go position by position. You can check out the time codes below if you want, but I just want to start off by saying this. Here's a group of players that should already be rostered in pretty much every 12-team, 4-round rookie draft style, okay? If any one of these names that you're looking at on your screen are available, they would take priority over the names I'm about to talk about, but I'm assuming they're already taken in your drafts. Let's start off with the running back position. All right, there's plenty of names that you can go out and add, get a speculative ad there for your roster. If anyone is going to be this year's Tyrone Tracy, I believe, and I'm going to put my stamp on it, I believe that will be Brashard Smith. It is no secret if you know this channel that I love Brashard Smith. I've made that very well known throughout this offseason. He was actually a top 10 running back for me in my pre-draft grades. Obviously, that didn't work out with the round 7 draft capital, and let's be 100% transparent. It's no secret that round 7 hit rates for running backs are grim, 9.7% in the last 11 years, but that's why we're talking about him on a taxi video. So the Chiefs director of college scouting, Ryan Nutt, this is what he had to say. He said that they had a much higher grade on Brashard Smith rather than round 7, but they knew the running back class was very deep. Have a listen in. This is what he had to say.
So we get to the 7th round, and Brett felt like giving up another 7th round pick to move up was well worth it, and I think everybody did, to get the kid that we liked in the mid rounds.
In my humble opinion, I believe he is the best pass catcher in the class. I know that sounds crazy. He went round 7. How is that possible? But that's my humble opinion. We're talking about a guy that played 3 years as a wide receiver at the University of Miami and then transferred to SMU to play the running back position. That wide receiver history, I mean, it shows up all over his film with him just being a true weapon out of the backfield. Warren Sharp tweeted out that Brashard Smith was number 1 in the class with a 25% target rate on his routes and number 2 in the class with a 1.68 yards per route run. I want you to walk with me. You ready? Let's walk together. I want you to see the vision. I believe this could be Andy Reid's next Jet McKinnon. I genuinely believe that. I mean, honestly, if you look at this backfield right now in the depth chart, he is instantly the best pass catcher on that team today. No disrespect to Isaiah Pacheco and the ghost of Kareem Hunt and Elijah Mitchell and Carson Steele, but today, right now, as he enters that building, he will be the best pass catching running back, point blank, period. I mean, if you look at what Jerick McKinnon has done for this offense in the past, he was a real weapon for this team through the air. I mean, go back to that 2022 season. He had 56 receptions, over 500 receiving yards, and 10 receiving touchdowns. He averaged 11.6 points per game. That is the type of potential we could see for someone like a Brashard Smith over the first few years in the NFL. And of course, if it doesn't work out, you can drop him and move on, but I think he's a very talented player. I think he's going to show out in camp. All right, the second running back we're trying to roster everywhere, Mr. Taj Brooks. All Taj Brooks did at college was just put up ridiculous numbers, all right? He was a monster at Texas Tech. In the last 2 years at Texas Tech, 1,500 rushing yards alone in back-to-back seasons, 10 touchdowns in 23, 17 touchdowns in 2024. Here's a couple notes from my scouting report. You guys ready for this? So here's what stood out about him that I loved. I think he has genuinely exceptional vision. I'm not just being hyperbolic, right? Whatever the word is, okay? But I believe he actually has incredible vision. In fact, I believe he had the best vision of anyone I scouted in this entire class. I mean, he has that like Lev Bell behind the line of scrimmage type of patience. No other part of his game is comparable to Le'Veon Bell, but the issue with him and why I believe he fell so far and was a big concern for me as well is he has a real subpar combo of this burst and long run speed. It is extremely evident on film. Of course, you don't have to be the fastest or the quickest to succeed in the NFL, but it was very glaring that he, just didn't have that type of juice you wanted from a guy you were going to take in the first 5 rounds of an NFL draft. So I was not surprised that he went this late. But look, outside of Chase Brown, this depth chart is completely naked in Cincinnati. Zach Moss is still recovering from a serious neck injury. I mean, we're talking Chris Carson vibes. Remember how that ended his career? Samaje Perine, sure, he's on the roster, but he couldn't even beat out the ghost of Kareem Hunt or Carson Steele for opportunities in Kansas City last year. I mean, that RB2 spot is wide open, and it is prime for the taking for here Taj Brooks. All right, probably my outside of Brashard Smith, my second favorite running back to roster in this taxi range is Kyle Monangai. All right, I can confidently say that Ben Johnson has not found his guy in that backfield yet. I mean, don't forget, this is the same Ben Johnson that coached with the Lions, the same Lions that shipped DeAndre Swift away in a trade after selecting Jahmyr Gibbs round 1 in the NFL draft. And don't be fooled, this staff was actively looking to replace DeAndre Swift in this draft, but after the draft and post-draft interviews, they mentioned that they just kept missing the pockets of running backs that they loved, meaning probably this team would have been a Travion Henderson landing spot if he was actually available when they were picking. But, I mean, look, they were actively looking to replace him. DeAndre Swift, let's be transparent, he was the worst all-around starting running back in the NFL last year. If you look at running backs who had at least 100 attempts in 2024, we're talking 46 running backs. Okay, you ready for this? This is where he ranks. He ranked 39th in yards per attempt. He was 39th in PFF grade. He was 44th in yards after contact per attempt and 42nd in elusive rating. Pretty much every metric across the board, this man was well below average towards the bottom of the starters in the NFL. And when we look at a name like Kyle Monangai, we're looking at a running back that does more with less. He forced the 12th most missed tackles in college football last year with 66. He was tied for 10th on our Lemons to Lemonade team. And don't forget that he was a unanimous first team all Big Ten guy. 0 fumbles on almost 700 career carries. And he had 139 missed tackles forced since 2023. That is first in college football. And the other guy he has to contend with is Rashawn Johnson, who's been the definition of a jag, just a guy, since entering the NFL. So Kyle is definitely worth a taxi spot. All right, the next name is very unique, and I think you need to roster him, honestly. Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt out of Arizona. The definition of a sleeper, might be the last true sleeper in this class. Look, the stats aren't going to blow you away. He had a great year in New Mexico in 2023. Over 1,100 rushing yards, 6.3 yards per attempt, 17 touchdowns. In 2024, you're looking at it, you say, wait, one game? Why did he only play one game in 2024? Well, the reason for that lack of production, Lance Zierlein notes that he had eligibility issues that sidelined him for all but one game in 2024. And if you want to pause and read what Lance Zierlein thinks about him, you can. But shout out to Gridiron Grading, who posted this chart over on X. You can see career receiving yards per game versus career rushing yards per game. And that XY line there is the average for draft picks since 2015. You can see Ja'Cory there at the bottom right, basically saying when he was on the field, he was productive. He's a pretty decent athlete, an 8.29 RAS, and he joins a backfield. I mean, I'm a Commanders fan. Y'all know this by now. I was very disappointed we didn't get a impact running back in this class because I know our depth chart at the running back spot is very weak. There's not a true game changer there anymore, and Brian Robinson and Austin Eckler can't seem to stay healthy anyway, so there's very much an opportunity for Ja'Cory to make a name for himself. All right, last running back we'll talk about before we get into wide receivers, Phil Mafah. I'll be 100% transparent on this one. I did not like scouting Phil Mafah. I'm not going to blow smoke up your ass, okay? I mean, nothing really stood out as special in my humble opinion. However, this is all about the landing spot. Sometimes when a player gets with the right coaching staff, anything is possible. And if you look at Cowboys coach Brian Schottenheimer, he was asked if he thought that Jaden Blue and Phil Mafah are capable of being starters. He said, I would hope so. Otherwise, we wouldn't have drafted them. So again, Phil Mafah is probably out there in some deeper formats and worth rostering. Why not? Why not put him on your roster in a backfield that is very speculative at this point? All right, moving on to the wide receiver position. He should be drafted, but in case he isn't, let's talk about Torrey Horton out of Colorado State. He is a very unique prospect, lands with the Seattle Seahawks. Look, he was eligible to declare in last year's NFL draft, but he came back to Colorado State for another season. Unfortunately, he sustained a serious season-ending injury very early into his season, but I will never forget his game versus Travis Hunter in 2023, where he had 16 catches, 133 yards, and a touchdown in that rivalry game, Colorado versus Colorado State. But he had a very impressive year last year, and he's a big body, skilled receiver, great hands, great boundary awareness. He's joining a Seahawks team that could definitely use an outside presence. I mean, look at their depth chart right now. You've got 2 slot receivers in Cup and MVS, or in JSN, right? You also have MVS on the outside. That's not really competing, right? I mean, you can easily take MVS's job. I know we all love the legend of Jake Bobo, but Torrey Horton is primed to really move up that depth chart. If you want an in-depth breakdown of your team with customized trade targets, players to buy, sell, hold, then get your team playbook today by either becoming a yearly Mother Flocker member with the promo code LAND, or by going directly to the Flock store, regardless of what promo code you're on. And if you want it done live, make sure you get the live tier. Those links are in the pinned comment. All right, another receiver here. How about Xavier Restrepo? Look, I know he wasn't drafted. I know he went undrafted. There were reports that the Titans said Cam Ward was wanting them to draft him in like round 5 or something. This is very simple. He and Cam Ward played together at Miami, and they have that inbuilt chemistry. Again, look at 2024 Miami with Cam Ward. He had over 1,100 receiving yards and 11 touchdowns. And again, we're looking at this depth chart, guys. There is plenty of opportunity for someone to step up. Yes, of course, Alec A.O. Manor they drafted. Of course, they drafted DK, okay? But the reality is those guys are probably going to be drafted in your rookie drafts. I'm giving you another option of a guy that I think could produce because of the chemistry he has with the current quarterback in town. All right, let's move on to the tight end position before we get to quarterbacks. So a name that I'm probably going to butcher, but I think is a very fun speculative ad is Oronde Gadsden. Am I butchering that? I know he played out of Syracuse. I watched a couple of his games, but I don't know exactly how to say his name. Eric Galco over on Twitter mentioned that over 25% of his targets were contested in 2024, yet he had 30, 15-plus yard catches. He can do it all from every alignment, only played 13% of his snaps in the slot. Could be a matchup nightmare for the Chargers. And think about it, Greg Roman has a vast history of success with tight ends. I don't think he's really found like his tight end yet in that offense, so I definitely think he's worth a pickup. And there are 2 quarterbacks that I think are just screaming ads on your taxi squad this year. Let's talk about the first one here. Dillon Gabriel. Okay, if he is not on your waiver wire, go ahead and skip to the next name. Totally okay. But his ADP through the first week is 507, meaning in most of your 4-round drafts, he's not being drafted right now. And that is ADP that was collected by Mason Dodd himself over on the Flock Fantasy website. That ADP has been very helpful for people in their drafts. This is likely to change. He's probably going to end up going in the 4th round. But if he is out there on your waivers, go get him. I know in our follower Superflex League, I was able to pick him up after our draft. So definitely go have a look. But whether you like it or not, this team took Dillon ahead of Shedeur. Round 3 versus round 5. They're both unlikely to ever hit for fantasy football based off historical hit rates. 0% hit rate for round 3 and round 5 in the last 11 years for a top 12 point per game season. But to be clear, this does not mean that Dillon is automatically going to be starting ahead of Shedeur Sanders or being ahead of him on the depth chart in Cleveland. However, Shedeur Sanders has an ADP of around the 210 to the 302 right now in Dynasty rookie drafts. So why wouldn't you spend some fake money, some fab, to pick up Dillon for free in this scenario? I mean, could Dillon be this year's Brock Purdy? Unlikely, right? But they have pretty comparable stats in their last collegiate seasons. You can see Dillon Gabriel actually had a higher completion percentage, more passing yards, passing touchdowns, a higher big time throw rate, less interceptions, a better passer rating, a turnover worthy play rating that was low. I mean, like they're very comparable in every category. All right, so I think he's worth picking up. Last quarterback here, how about Will Howard out of Ohio State? Currently, I believe wholeheartedly that he has the clearest path of any of these late round quarterbacks to starting in an NFL game. Maybe by the time you're watching this, Aaron Rodgers has signed with the Steelers. But even if he has, Rodgers does not have a long leash, a long lifetime in the NFL. And currently, as I'm recording this video today, you can see the depth chart is Mason Rudolph, Will Howard. He's already number 2. And again, if Rodgers is there, what? Big deal, okay? You can still add the guy. But Will Howard was a game changer in 2024. Again, if we compare him to the Brock Purdy, to the Dillon Gabriel, very comparable seasons, very good game managers. And we all know that Will Howard is a winner because he was a national champion, right? He just won the national championship with Ohio State. He's also a goal line threat. You can see he had 9 rushing touchdowns in 2023, 7 rushing touchdowns in 2024. And while the rushing yards might not seem that impressive, you have to keep in mind that college football includes sacks as negative rushing yards. So take a flyer on this unknown situation. There is literally no reason not to. And if you're in some deeper formats, I'm going to mention some honorable mentions here at the very end of this video, okay? So names like Quinn Ewers. Yep, if Tua Tags goes down again, there's a possibility, right? Damian Martinez. If they truly are going to trade one of Charbonnet or Ken Walker, Damian Martinez will instantly have some opportunity there. How about Savion Williams, Isaac Tesla, DK, Jalen Lane, all these guys that went in those mid rounds, Keandre Lambert-Smith, and then Gunnar Helm, who had a bad combine, but was a pretty good productive player there at Texas. So those are some honorable mentions. I appreciate y'all for watching the video. Do me a favor, hit that like button to show some love. Subscribe if you like the content. I'll see you guys in the next video. Nothing but love. If you're thinking about supporting us in this economy, that's big love, and you deserve love in return. So for every yearly Mother Flocker member who uses the promo code LAND, we're giving out a free team playbook, our 2025 rookie report, access to all premium tools, free site vouchers, and of course, a huge thank you from the LAND crew. You're far too kind. That's love.